Pennsylvanian coal swamps dominated the Earth during the Carboniferous period. But before we go into what the swamps were, let's talk about this Carboniferous period. This period is separated by two subsections, the Mississippian and the Pennsylvanian. The Mississippian period lasted from 359.2 to 318.1 million years ago, while the Pennsylvanian followed from 318.1 to 299 million years ago. These subsections are distinguished from each other by looking at the stratigraphy and seeing when the layers switched from mostly limestone to coal. The environment during this period was humid and tropical, and most of the land was covered in shallow warm waters. There are not distinct seasons during this time period, and this is thought to be because there is one large ocean covering the Earth except for one area where Pangaea was coming together. Here's a video of the continents moving together during the Carboniferous period, and as you can see, they're moving closer and closer to each other, forming the supercontinent Pangaea. There were two large glaciers at the South Pole during this period, and they contained a large amount of our water. This decrease in water caused the sea levels to drop, leading to an increase in land life and the creation of the coal swamps. These coal swamps accounted for the majority of our land-based ecosystem during the Carboniferous period. They were forests made up of seedless plants that eventually turned into coal. There were a variety of trees and plants that dominated these swamps. These include scale trees, giant horse trails, and tree ferns. There are even some seed ferns called pteridosperms that were common during the Carboniferous period. These scale trees were able to grow to a height of 130 feet and have a diameter of 7 feet. This is a depiction of what we think the coal swamps would look like. As you can see, there are large trees, some smaller ones, and shallow swamp type water. While it may be hard to imagine, it is thanks to the coal swamps that were here during this period that we now have access to automated transportation. This is because most of the coal we have today was created during the Carboniferous period by these coal swamps. The coal is created in steps. When these plants or trees die, they would fall into the water and then build up layers of peat. They were eventually covered with seas and buried by deposits of sediment from the ocean. Over time, the increase of pressure and temperature compacted this organic matter and formed the coal that we have today. The coal beds can be up to 11 or 12 meters thick and are used to separate the start of the Pennsylvanian from the Mississippian. Coal balls can be found within the coal layers, and they are pockets of plant debris that were preserved as fossils and not coal. The index fossils that are used for the Pennsylvanian time are the Versuland foraminifers, and also the remains from the forests that were around during the time. Other fossils used to identify this period are Gastrioceras, Diaboloceras, and Paralagoceras, and they're all found in marine deposits. The Earth had lots of seafloor during this time, and they were dominated by brachiopods. Freshwater clams made their first appearance, and there is an increase of gastropods, fish, and shark diversity. The uplift of the continents caused a transition from a more terrestrial environment as opposed to the marine environment we saw before. The first land snails appear, and there is a large prevalence of insects like dragonflies. Insects like millipedes, scorpions, and spiders were an important aspect of this ecosystem. Diaspids appeared during the Carboniferous and are split into two groups. In one group, there was the marine reptiles, lizards, and snakes, and in the others, there were crocodiles, dinosaurs, and birds. This is a fossil that could have been found during the Carboniferous period. These tetrapods could grow to the size of crocodiles and dominated the Permian and Mesozoic period that followed the Carboniferous period. As stated before, the climate of the Earth during the Carboniferous period was humid and tropical. But towards the end of this period, temperature dropped and it got a bit drier. The average temperature of the early Carboniferous period was approximately 68 degrees Fahrenheit. But during the middle of the Carboniferous period, the average temperature had cooled to 54 degrees Fahrenheit. This drop in temperature is directly correlated to a large drop in carbon dioxide. This graph shows the temperature and carbon dioxide in each different period. Now, if we zoom in on the Carboniferous period, we can see that at around the middle of the period, we have a pretty large drop in carbon dioxide, also resulting in a significant drop in the global temperature. So, what happened to these coal swamps? Well, the coal swamps that covered the land gradually shrank in size due to the change in climate and the land being pushed up into mountains due to the movement of plate tectonics and continent collision. Some of these swamps that were in wetter regions of the Earth continued to thrive throughout the Permian period. But at the end of the Permian period, there was the largest extinction known in our history. It killed 95% of the species on Earth. Unfortunately, the coal swamps did not survive this extinction, and no coal deposits have been found from the rocks in the following period, the Triassic period. Now, what I find interesting about the coal swamps is how what formed them is also what destroyed them. They were formed from the movement of the tectonics and the change in weather. But it was this exact movement that changed the Earth, changing the weather, that destroyed these swamps. And while some could credit the Industrial Revolution to the discovery of coal, I think that the true reason we have what we have today is from the creation of coal. Without this period that created the coal, we would not have everything we do. We couldn't have access to trains. We wouldn't have discovered all these things. Maybe we would have found another way, but the discovery of coal really jump-started everything we have. I think that this period is debatably the most important time period that exists in the history of Earth. Without the creation of the coal, we would not have what we have today. In conclusion, Pennsylvania coal swamps were the forests that covered the land during the Carboniferous period. These swamps were land areas that had shallow warm water that was home to many creatures that were alive during this time. There was lots of large trees and plants that were around that thrived in this area. These swamps formed the majority of the coal that we have today, and this is through a process that takes millions of years. It is because of the dead trees that form the coal that we have the coal. And these coal swamps saw their completion at the end of the Paleozoic era because of a large extinction that took place, killing 95% of the Earth's species. This was a critical time for the Earth, in helping us form the life that we have today. Now, that is all I have for the Pennsylvania coal swamps.